everybody. Welcome back to Pretend World's Real People. As always, I'm Tyler, and I am recording this super duper late at night. Just got back from closing the bar, and I felt like I had a rush of energy, and I'm ready to just do the intro. I do these intros separately, so yeah, it just feels kind of fun and off the cuff. What is new? What has happened in a week? Well, I will tell you, I got a chance to see The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and I love that has to be probably like my top 5 movies of this year. And I'm gonna say it's gonna stay on the list because there's nothing like it. I haven't laughed that hard since oh my god, since since Jackass Forever, but I guess earlier than that, Tropic Thunder. It was an amazing film. So if you get a chance to check it out, it should be out on the 22nd. So yeah, it'll be out about a week and a half or so after this podcast initially releases. And yeah, I can't say too much more about it, but that it was amazing and I loved it. And you guys should check it out as well if you're a fan of Nicolas the Cage. Anyway, let's get down to brass tacks. Why you are listening to this episode? You're probably listening to it because you are a huge fan of Reacher, the newest Amazon Prime show that came out earlier this year. Maybe you loved Swamp Thing. Maybe you loved Channel Zero, The Dream Door, which I did. Still scares the heck out of me. Absolutely love that show. But I had a chance to steal about an hour or so of Maria Sten's time. Who is Maria? Well, you have seen her as the lead of Channel Zero, The Dream Door. She was Liz Tremayne in Swamp Thing, and she is Francis Neagley in Reacher. She is amazing. She travels a lot. She shares a lot about her origin story and how she sort of found acting through dance. So yeah, let's get right down to it, everybody. Let's sit down and chat with Maria Sten.
My name is Maria Sten. I am an actor and a writer, and just came off of course, doing the Amazon show Reacher, which is why we're here, obviously. And other than that, what else am I? I'm an actor and a writer first, but I am also a horse lover. I'm a nature person. I'm an adventurer. I'm a wanderluster, and that's also very much part of my identity, I think, to have sort of a balance from being this workaholic and working in Hollywood and being in the industry. I think that there's a counterpart to that. So I like to give the whole uh, scope, if you will.
Yeah, it sounds like you are embracing the artist nomadic lifestyle.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think nowadays, because of COVID, it sort of lend itself to that. I think a lot of people were sitting in LA and thinking, "Oh my God, why am I sitting here, stuck in a house with no amenities left?" Everything that made LA so wonderful at the time wasn't available. And I think for me and many other people just felt like, "Oh, let's venture out and see what else we can see while we're going through this strange time."
Yeah, it's kind of odd how the lockdown and the pandemic allowed us to further explore our sense of humanity and our creativity, especially as actors we thrive on essentially being anywhere at any given time, right? So if you're not
Yeah,
needed or if you're not doing anything, it's just more of a wow, I have freedom. this
yeah,
is this is
exactly.
crazy. Uh,
Exactly, yeah.
do you have? I love asking this part because I know when lockdown occurred and I wasn't getting any auditions sent in, no self tapes, nothing. Everything was locked down. I just threw myself back into my writing. I know you wrote, a couple episodes of Big Sky, and you've written and directed some short films. Did you dive back in writing at all during the pandemic, or even to this day? Have you decided to kind of go back into it?
Yeah, I sometimes feel quite bad because things worked out really well for me in terms of work during the pandemic. I was just coming off a Swamp Thing in 2019 and was trying to figure out what to do next. And I've always been sort of acting, writing, but I did Channel Zero in 2018, straight into Swamp Thing in 2019, and so I hadn't really been able to sort of do a whole lot of writing. And then now I was sort of having a conversation with my team, and they felt that, this would be a good time. There were some opportunities that came around, and they felt that this would be a good time to switch gears a little bit and dig into writing. And then an opportunity came around, which was a project that I was working on for Amazon, and I was offered a staff writer job, and I thought, oh,
Oh,
but pilot season is coming. This was January 2020, and
oh
my whole
boy.
team felt, no, you should staff. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. This is a great opportunity. Go write for a little bit. Like, you've proven that you are an actor, that you can act. Let's switch gears. And it was the right call, because you learn so much in the writer's room as a staff writer. And so I started that job in January 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and all of my actor friends were shut down, and we just went to Zoom, and we continued the room all the way until June, and that got shut down. And then I took a couple months off, went to protest in the streets of LA.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, it was, that time. And then I got Big Sky soon after, because again, I sort of felt, okay, what's happening now? Are we going back to acting? And again, I speak with my team. I have a great team, and they're very supportive, and we sort of always have a conversation about what's the next step forward, because my life is, sort of all over the place. And they also felt, if you get another writing opportunity, take it, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Productions are slowly coming back, but not fully. And then, yeah, Big Sky came around, and so I thought, okay, I'm gonna take Big Sky. And then that got extended, right? So I ended up being on Big Sky for a year. And then
Oh wow.
I finished Big Sky, and then I got Reacher. So I feel really terrible sometimes. I feel very guilty that it just worked out so conveniently for me. But I'm very grateful, obviously, that I am able to work both as a writer and as an actor.
That's amazing. Because a lot of people I've spoken to, no one had any clue what to do.
I know. Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, are you going back to Big Sky to do some writing? After the pilot season is over, or what's your next step as far as between acting and writing, or are you just kind of letting everything and letting the chips fall as they may, as they might say?
As of now, I have a project in development, a pilot that I sold, and so I'm focusing on that at the moment. And then I'm specing a feature film, and then I'm also, waiting to see. Reacher did get a second pickup, right? So
Yeah.
second season pickup. So I'm waiting to see, how that's going to play out in regards to Neely, obviously. And nothing, who knows, nothing is for sure, but that's sort of what I have going on right now. And then I'm auditioning for movies. I think I've been doing so much television, I'd love to do a movie. So yeah, I'm still double dipping. Still double dipping as much as I can.
Well, that's the thing in this industry, right? We have to keep a bunch of different irons in the fire, and see
Exactly.
what might pop up. And I spoke to Kate Duffy, one of the staff writers for Reacher, and I mentioned like, hey, you should bring her back. I feel like there's more you can do with that character.
I hope so. Neely is she's so fun. I loved that character, and I love how her and Reacher have that special relationship. And she is such a favorite from the book franchise. So it's exciting, and we'll see what happens. But it's also, I think, really important to keep yourself motivated, right? I think as artists, we are, especially as actors, we're often just waiting around for the phone to ring. And I was just not wired that way ever, which is why I started writing in the first place. There was just, I just, I would lose my mind, absolutely lose my mind, if I had to just sit and wait for someone to say, "Hey, you can go work now."
Yeah.
That's absolutely not how I'm wired. I started writing, also because I didn't necessarily see the roles that I wanted to play. You know, I'm a huge Western nerd, and I grew up looking at Kevin Costner and Henry Fonda and Clint Eastwood, and I never really saw myself reflected. And so I ended up writing like a Black Western TV pilot, and
Oh,
then I wrote, directed, and produced a couple of short films just to keep creating and keep learning. Because I do think once you write something and get it on its feet, you learn so much about the process.
yeah.
Um, so I think it's just really important just to keep staying creative and stay motivated, and not wait for other people to give you permission to work, permission to create, permission to express yourself. Yeah, that's very important for me.
That's so awesome. A lot of people have mentioned that too. It's like I'm sick of waiting by the phone. I gotta do something else, you know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
would you say, I mean, you love westerns as you said, but is there another genre that you would like to, maybe you are working on right now, whether it's horror or sci-fi or comedy, a genre that you just want to tackle?
I love action.
Oh yeah.
I love the big splashy action, which is why it's so fun to be on Reacher, obviously. But I really love that, and I love that genre for the female action heroes that we have. I'd love to keep trying to create some good roles for women in that genre. I think sometimes they've tended they've tend to come off a little like mm, reductive, maybe. Not,
Hmm,
that's not the right
yeah.
word, but I think more just that we have an idea of what a woman is supposed to be when she steps into a man's shoes in that genre, badass and tough and emotionless. And I think that there is so much room to explore for women in that genre, and sort of owning the fact that women are different than men,
Yeah.
and playing around with that. And I'm seeing it now. I'm loving so much that we are seeing such a wide variety of female action heroes now. I think that's super exciting, and you are seeing how people are just, upending that sort of specific narrative or specific idea about what a woman is supposed to be like in that space. So yeah, I love action. I do love sci-fi also. I think I'm always drawn to the character, and then a world more than anything. And then I think about how does that play out? Who are the people that we're looking at? What are the controversies, and what's the bigger thing we're trying to say? What's the bigger story? What's the bigger thematic premise that we want to um, shed light on? I think that's always interesting to me. Humanity, really, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, humanity is so interesting and exciting, and the complexities thereof. I think that's always fascinated me so much. So.
Oh yeah. Is there a property that maybe exists right now that you'd love to be a part of that does acknowledge, say, it has bits of social commentary, but it's also melding so well with the general narrative without it being, too heavy-handed. It just fits well with the story. Is there something that you see on, whether it's film right now or TV right now, that you're interested in being a part of or are looking to be a part of?
Mm, I mean, there are many, and I think with what already exists, I just enjoy it for what it is.
Ah, okay.
I think my mind, at least as a writer, I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always thinking sort
Mhm.
of, what can I create that isn't there already? Like, I am currently working on a project that I created that is about a female serial killer. But
Oh
it's in
wow.
that vein of Killing Eve. I love Killing Eve.
Oh,
Apropos of,
Killing Eve is great.
I think that's such a great example of something that's different, something that's subverting a trope, and something that's so cleverly done. So something like that, I think, is really interesting and exciting. And I mean, there's so many great shows out, but I think I'm always sort of thinking ahead about what isn't there, and that's often where I create from. If I feel a void, like I really want to
Oh,
play a villain, and so now I'm, developing this show about a female serial killer. Or I really want to play a whatever, a female marine, and that's not a thing that's out there. So now I'm considering writing this action movie, which is basically like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but with a black couple in the Marines.
Oh, wow.
Like whatever it is that I feel could be fun and entertaining and have something to say that I'm not seeing out in the landscape.
Yeah, that's what I'd kill to see that, rendition of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That just sounds awesome.
Me
I
too.
mean,
That's
yeah,
thank
I
you.
mean, coming because I'm a writer as well. So whenever I hear someone else's idea, like, that sounds fucking awesome. Like, I would love
Oh,
to
that's
see
great.
that. That's awesome. Wow, that's uh, coming from a writer's perspective. Do you have any sort of, I guess, practice or method to the madness as far as outlining and getting to develop your features or your TV scripts? Like, are you more of an outline person, or are you let the chaos reign free? I'm just going to write on a bunch of sticky notes and put them on the drywall kind of person.
I am an outline person
Okay.
because I do believe it's just the most productive way of writing something. But I absolutely despise writing outlines. I hate them with a passion. I love writing scenes. I love writing action. I love writing dialogue. I love writing the stuff that is in the script. But I will write the outline. And I think for me, it's a combination of doing the outline and doing the sticky notes. I start with the note cards actually, and I write tiny little blips on those, and then I put it out on my carpet, and then I lay on the floor and look at it and move it around, and you know, sort of break the story that way. And then once I know once I see the story, then I put it into an outline form based off the note cards. And then once I have that, then I go to script. And it's just, it's like you gotta get through the cabbage to get to the chocolate cookie.
Yeah. Wow, that's a
So
great way of putting it.
yeah, that's how I look at it. Yeah, and I think I also there is a part of me that sort of feels maybe sometimes a little bit like an imposter because I was an actor first.
Okay.
And I sort of became a writer sort of by happenstance because I just decided to write and then certain people thought it was good. And so I came to my career as a screenwriter in a very different way than I think a lot of people do because I didn't covet it the same way, but I'm just a storyteller, right? And so for me, it's just about how can I best facilitate a story. And so sometimes I feel, you know, oh, I'm not a writer. I'm just an actor who acts like she's a writer, And so I've been struggling with that a lot the last couple of years, but now that I'm writing much more and, seriously and being employed as a writer, I think it has allowed me to sort of embrace that and really just say, okay, well, if you can write, write. That's
Yeah.
it. I feel compelled to do so even when I don't get paid for it. So I feel like that must say something about me.
Yeah, it just shows that the passion is true to you, right? Like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
want to do it. It's fun. And
Exactly.
what about the acting side of it? I mean, how did you not how, but when did you decide you wanted to get into this business? Was it watching something on TV or watching an old western, or was it just something you felt like, this is where I fit?
It's interesting. I've always been a performer. I
Hmm.
was an athlete when I was a kid. I did gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, track and field, competitive horseback riding, kickboxing, and then I became a dancer. And that was my music and dance were my first two passions. And when I was a teenager, I really started going heavy into dance, and I did ballet as a kid. And I did some theater when I was young, and then again when I was a teenager. But I'm from Denmark originally, and I moved
Yeah.
to New York when I was 18 to pursue a career in dance, and trained uh, for 3 years doing that. And also did work as a professional dancer for 8 years. It ended up being that's actually dancing and modeling was
Wow.
how I supported myself while I was going to acting class. So
Wow.
so that's sort of how I did it. But when I then became a professional dancer was when I realized that that's what I didn't want to do. Because I felt like I was dancing, but I was always looking at other creative expressions. And I did music for a while, and then I realized that the music industry is not it's a hard industry, particularly for women, I think. And also I'm not a fantastic singer. I can sing, but I'm not Beyonce or Whitney Houston, and I think that um that's just, I had to sort of realize, okay, maybe this pop star dream isn't gonna be it. And the industry, I think, just also wasn't for me. And then I finally decided to sort of get back to acting, and I went to an acting class and just audited and felt this moment of sort of the oceans parted and stardust came down from the sky, and I had this epiphany, like I saw the light. And I very much felt, oh, if I am only allowed to do one thing for the rest of my life and it is acting, I would be okay with that, which is the first time in my life that I've ever felt that way. Because I am, as you can tell, like I have zero chill. So I'm always doing 4,000 things at the same time. But I knew that when I stepped into that acting class. And yeah, and that was it. And then I just started training, learning about the craft, doing scene study, doing character work, and that was it. But I've always had a love for filmmaking. I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan as a kid, and I would watch like the extended DVDs and the behind the scenes 20 hours worth of footage
That's
every
a lot.
Christmas when I was a child. And so for me, the fascination with film and cinema was always there. And then it just sort of all came together when I stepped into that acting class. And I think um yeah, that was it. But then of course what happened later is I wasn't booking for a number of years, and then I just decided to start writing and doing my own projects, and now I'm, doing a little bit of everything, and that's how I like it.
Yeah, what was it like, going from making your own projects to, say, working on Channel Zero, The Dream Door? I mean, what was it like immediately switch? I mean, there's not a huge difference between, making short films or, say, like indie TV to that kind of TV. But did it feel surreal at first, or did it just feel like another project that you really cared about?
I mean, it was a big deal because Channel Zero was my first role, like my first professional role ever, and it was the lead of the season. So it was major, it was like a dream come true. Um, and then of course, my little tiny short film production versus a real, TV show, that is very different. But I'd been on, film sets before. I'd been on TV sets before, when I was first starting out and I first came to LA. I did background work because I had to pay the bills. And I think it's such a wonderful, if you are there and you are not just sitting waiting to get your meal penalty and like trying to get, you know, overtime or whatever, but you're sitting and you're paying attention and you're learning and you're seeing what the camera crew is doing, and you're, you know, like just taking in as much as you can. I think that can be a really educational experience. And that's sort of always how I decided to eh, embrace whatever experiences that I had coming to LA. I just wanted to get into it. I wanted to
Yeah.
learn as much as possible. I just wanted to absorb everything that I possibly could so that I one day could run my own TV show, so that I could direct on a bigger scale, and I think all of these knowing all of these different elements make you a better performer, makes you a better writer, makes you a better producer, makes you a better director. So it wasn't like I came like, oh my god, like there's there's so many people. I'm like, there's a lot of cameras, but because I had seen it before, but the fact that it was me now having to show up and do this thing that I had been wanting to do for so long, that was quite incredible. And I mean, the Channel Zero experience was such a special experience because of the people that I worked with. I'm still friends with the crew, still friends
Oh
with the
wow.
cast, with my director, with Nick and Tosca, the showrunner. We all keep in touch, and it just felt like we were just a gang of rebel friends going off to like make a thing, which is such a special experience. You don't get that a lot in our business, and so I really hold that experience very dear to my heart, and I think we all do. That was a very special time.
Yeah, it was also just a great season of horror television. You know, you guys made it so um, completely creepy and horrific, but also just so alluring. Like I was dialed into every single episode of that season, and venturing
Nice.
into like Swamp Thing and then Reacher. Like I don't know, it just seems like you have a such an authenticity to every character you play. There's nothing that is, some actors may put on a facade or doesn't seem as authentic, but especially with, say Swamp Thing and Reacher, you feel so, or you seem so comfortable, like you feel comfortable in your character. Do you have a hard time cutting off who that person is when you go home, or do you kind of carry that with you throughout the rest of your career, like little bits of that character?
Thank you, by the way. I mean, that's
Yeah, of
that's
course.
wonderful to hear. I don't have a hard time. Well, I guess that depends. Sometimes I have a hard time cutting it off, but not really. I love the character work. I love diving into learning about another person's human experience, and I was trained that way, that you do a lot of that work before you even set foot on set. You know your person, you know what they like, what they don't like, what their wounds are, what they want in life, etc., etc. Um, and I don't think that, obviously, I haven't played some really evil characters yet,
Not
so
yet.
not yet. so so I think that's a very different experience, and I think that can be hard and that can rub off on you. But I will say that each character teaches me something about my own life. Um, um, Jillian in Channel Zero taught me something about relationships. And I was at a place in my life where I've been alone for a long time, and then being this woman who was newlywed and had trust issues and had to figure out her marriage was a very educational and eye-opening experience for me at that time in my life. And Liz taught me what it was like to live in a small town. Like, she's the only person in Swamp Thing who actually likes where she's from, who isn't trying to leave this, swamp town. And I, at the time when I went to shoot, I had no idea, because I had been living in New York, LA, Vegas, Copenhagen. They're all, cosmopolitan cities. And I never understood why someone wanted to live in a small town until I went to Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where we shot the show. And which is, it's not a tiny, tiny town, but it's a smaller town, and it has a great community, and there's so much art, and people are friendly. And I just sort of embraced that community vibe. And I took something from that, and now I own a home in a small town. So it's a really interesting thing to discover. And then with Neely, she uh, enlisted in the army and ran away from home, and did that, and had very significant experiences with that. And I think she taught me what it means to be like an American patriot, for better or for worse. But I think in Neely's life, her time in the army saved her life. And I think that's true for a lot of young people who don't see any other option. And so I think there's something, you know, so admirable about joining the military and going away to fight for your country. But I also think it's that is not a small thing, right? You have to be a certain kind of person to go risk your life to fight for your country.
Yeah.
And so that was really interesting to me to dive into what that means, um are you doing it for that reason, or are you doing it because you got to get away from something back home, or are you doing it because, well, I'm just looking out for the guy next to me, which uh, you know I think, having spoken to a lot of people who have been in the military, that is mostly what it is. It's just about looking out for the guy next to you.
Yeah.
But there's something beautiful to that. And so she just taught me what that means, having an American flag on your shoulder, and deciding to, step up and risk your life in order to save the guy next to you.
Wow, I think it's really insightful that you hold on to those things. You learn from those characters and hang on to those experiences, within your personal life too, just to keep that there. That's just fantastic. And when it comes to switching over to a new project, maybe you're writing something different. Is there anything that you do that maybe helps kind of like cleanse the energy around you? Whether it's a lot of people like to meditate, some people like to go hiking, others like to draw, paint. Do you have anything that allows you to sort of decompress a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I like to do something that is completely non-Hollywood related. I go horseback riding,
Yeah.
and or I will travel. I'll go off, to, I don't know, Botswana or Kenya or Mexico, and just go. I do these trips now, horseback riding trips, in Southern Africa, where you're basically, and I just did one in Jordan, where you're off the grid with no cell phone reception for a week, and you're just on horseback exploring, seeing wildlife, or meandering through the desert, and sort of just being completely off grid, away from civilization. And for me, that is such a reset, and it inspires me, and it nourishes me to come back and continue on a project, or get an idea for something new. So I do that. But on a much smaller scale, when I'm switching between projects, I have uh, playlists, music playlists for each of my projects and each of my characters. And so I will, play the Neely playlist when I'm getting into Neely mode, or I will play, for each of my writing projects, I have a playlist. And so when I am getting ready to dive into that project, I will start playing that music.
Oh, but is there a particular artist that Neely listened to?
She's not a particular one.
Okay.
She's a Chicago girl, right? So she
Yeah.
listens to a lot of Chicago blues. Like, that's what,
Hell
that in my mind, I had this thing that's what she grew up on. And then there's some hip hop. There's a little bit of Jay-Z. Um, but it's kind of all over the place, because part of my character work is to um load emotional weight onto each of these songs. And so each of these songs have a significant, um, you know, point, or they matter in a special way to my character. Um, and it doesn't really do anything other than just, it helps me in my crazy mind in the process.
That's awesome. For Neely, for some reason, I thought maybe she was a low level Styx fan, watching the show. I don't know why, but Renegade came up out of nowhere. I thought, oh, I feel
Oh
like she'd
yeah,
listen to Styx. But I had to ask. That's very cool, and it's curious to see,
that's
who.
interesting.
Yeah, it was just a weird thing my writer
I
brain
don't
came
know
up with,
him, but
but
now I will have to look them up.
oh yeah, they're not great. But
Okay,
Renegade is a really fun song. A lot of people make fun of you for it if you listen to it. But
gotcha.
I feel like it's a very underrated song to listen to for a character like that. I do want to ask, because I know we're kind of short on time, but I'll get to whether or not you have any sort of advice that you think you could pass on to other arts workers, whether it's someone who's acting, writing, producing. Do you have anything that maybe somebody has passed on to you that you've held on to, or something that you've had a revelation about that you pass on to others?
Um, Mm, I think the number one thing is stay curious. That is the one thing that I sort of live by, whether it's about other human beings around you, whether it's about what don't I know about my craft, what do I still have to learn about my craft. And when you are getting notes, where's that note coming from? Instead of having that innate, oh, why are they giving me notes? I suck. I think that there's always something positive that you can take. Most of the time, I should say, there's something positive that you can take from constructive criticism, from people that you trust, that you respect. Um, and I think doing something that is not related to the industry, I think is super important because you can run yourself into the ground when you are doing nothing but chasing this Hollywood thing. And I think the way there is one advice that my first acting coach said. He said, you want to be a good actor, go and live life, go fall in love, go get your heart broken, go travel, go to the museum, go to the opera, because we are showing the human experience on film and television. And if you aren't living life, how can you do that? So I think going to just live life and going to do something at least once a week that isn't related to the industry is going to save your life, I think.
Yeah, that's sage advice for sure. I love stay curious. That's something I'll definitely hang on to for the for the next round of notes you get.
Good.
But speaking of living life, this is my favorite question of the entire show. Do you have a party story that you could share with us? It doesn't have to be industry related, but something that has stuck with you for so long. Like it's one of those stories you could pick up on a dime and go through the entire thing just because it had that much of an impact on you. Do you have any sort of story you could share with us?
Oh God, no, not on the spot. um, no, I mean, I have many stories. Most of mine are travel stories. I can tell you about that time my bag got lost in the South Africa in Johannesburg airport, and I went to Botswana by myself without my bag. Ended up in this little dirt town in the middle of nowhere. Um, and I met this other woman who was traveling alone too, and she's like, "Oh, you lost your bag too?" And I said, "Yes." And then you're in the middle of nowhere in the bush, so they're like, "Come back tomorrow and see if we can locate your bag," but they're not gonna send it out to you like it's New York City or something. And so I was just standing there, and there's no cell phone reception, and there's this dirt road in the middle of the bush. And this woman, she looks at me, the one that I had been talking to, and she's like, "Are you traveling alone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just hanging." And I said, "Oh, you live here?" And she's like, "Yeah, my brother's coming to pick me up." And she told me the name of the village that she lives in. And I was like, "Oh, that's where my hotel is." And she's like, "How are you getting there?" And I said, "I don't know." And she went, "Oh, hop in." And I was like, "Okay." And so I hopped in with her and her brother, and they took me to the hotel, and I ended up spending 2 days with her and her family, showing me around Botswana, before I went to on this horseback safari in the bush in the middle of nowhere. And we're still friends today. This is 4 years later,
No
and it's just so wonderful how you can make connections sort of randomly by staying curious. Of course, being safe
way.
while staying curious. But I've traveled alone my entire life, and I have a pretty good sort of radar for when I feel safe and when I feel unsafe. So I love those, random moments where you just like something beautiful and happens, the connection happens based off these random incidents. And then, she drove me back to the airport the next day and we got our bags. It's just, yeah, so that would probably be, I have a lot of those kind of stories. So yeah, that would probably be
Wow.
it.
That's that's such a great story. And it's so happenstance, right? Like what
Yeah, exactly.
just
And I that's what I love, that when you are when you are curious and when you are open that way to explore, which is why I love traveling alone, because you are sort of forced to be in the space and interact with people who are there around you. Um, and when you're staying curious and open that way, you get to have some really amazing experiences, and just getting to know the people that live where you are and sort of what their lives are like. My mentor, she had a saying that said, "What's it like to be human for you?" And she said, whenever you're going into an audition, ask in your mind, you want to ask the casting director that. You want to ask that of your character. You want to ask that of people around you, because I think um, it nurtures empathy.
Nice. Yeah.
And I always took that with me, and so when I go out in the world, I always carry that with me, and I have had some incredible experiences because of that.
Wow, that makes me want to travel alone more.
You should. It's great.
It's New Zealand is first on the list, so I think I'll go
Oh
from there
yes,
and then keep hopping. Wow,
hard on my bucket list. I still want to go to New Zealand.
I'm surprised you haven't been yet.
I have not. No, I've been
Oh
trying to
wow.
go since Lord of the Rings. um, but I will. I hope that I will go either sometime this year or next year.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, make sure you visit every single location they shot at.
Absolutely, I intend to.
I do want to ask: is there anything you'd like for us to promote during this episode? So it could be, Reacher, it could be something else that you really care about. A lot of people have been doing charities. It could be an Etsy shop. Is there anything you'd like for us to promote with your episode?
I mean, Reacher seems like an obvious one. I'm proud of that show. I love the people that we work with, and that's super exciting. And then I also am working with a few different organizations, primarily the Thirst Project, which is this nonprofit youth organization based out of LA. And they actually have a Walk for Water Day coming up the Sunday, the 20th. Let me see if I get my math right here. Um, yeah, Sunday, March 20th, there's a Walk for
Okay.
Water Day in LA. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to be there, but I do believe that we are living in a time where, the water scarcity is becoming a bigger issue with climate change, and with all of the displaced peoples in South Sudan. And of course, now we're seeing it in Ukraine. Um, but this company, they go in and they build wells in communities that need it. And I just really love what they're doing. It's a super young company, and they just decided to go out and do something about the issues in the world, and I admire that so much.
Oh wow. Yeah, we're definitely sharing that. I've never heard of that project, so I'm gonna look into that as
Yeah,
well. Um,
absolutely.
wow. That's so cool. I didn't know that existed. I feel like a horrible
Yeah,
person.
they're great.
uh, I have one more thing we have to do before I let you go. But I want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for donating your time to coming onto the show and allowing us to kind of hear more of your story. It's just been really cool chatting with you, and yeah, I hope you end up heating up over there in the snow.
Thank you.
Hopefully, it's not too
Absolutely.
cold for too long.
No,
Um,
no, I'm all bundled up. I have a fire going and everything, so
oh
I'm
yeah,
I'm good now.
you know what you're
Thank you
doing.
so much. I do. Yep. Self-sufficiency is important.
Well, this is the last thing I'll do, and then I'll bid you adieu. This is what we like to call our awkward goodbye. It's so much fun.
Mhm.
So I will do a silent Wayne's World countdown, and when I point to you, give us your best audible awkward goodbye. Are you ready?
Got it. Okay.
Okay. And
Uh, um. Okay. Goodbye.